Hey creeps, Cameron here, author of the Autumn Crow books, and welcome back to Library Macabre. Today we are visiting not two bookstores, but two book warehouses, packed to the brim with books. So let's go over to the car and let's get on the road. How'd you get in my car? Hey creeps, how's it going? Welcome to another book shopping vlog. Today we're going out of the library to see what we can find in the wild. Today I'm going to a place that I have never ever been to before, actually. I've been to like all of the stores in my area of Ohio, I feel like, but this is actually one that I have missed. This is the Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore, so I really have no idea what to expect. It could be a bunch of withdrawn library books. I feel like they're supposed to have a lot of donated books there, and I've actually seen pictures of the store, and it seems to be pretty big. I might be able to find some really good things today. Fingers crossed. It's a bit of a drive for me. It's going to be like an hour drive, but I think it's worth it. So let's go together and see what we can find at the Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore. But first I need to make a little stop at Meijer, and I need to get myself a coffee. So we're going to go to Starbucks. That backfiring car scared the shit out of me. Okay, I have arrived at my destination. We are in Cincinnati, so I had to park on a block, and I am walking to the bookstore now, but it is a beautiful day, and it's a nice little neighborhood. I'm hoping to find some vintage books today. Christopher Pike, Babysitter's Club, Sweet Valley, those kinds of books. So I'm almost there. Let's see what we can find. First stop, the restrooms, because a guy has to pee when he's been on the road for over an hour. So I stopped at the restrooms, and yeah, it was a restroom. It was a small restroom, very cramped. That's not to say that the rest of the store is small, cramped, and packed. It is packed. I will say that. It's not small by any means. This is a humongous, sprawling warehouse packed with books of all genres, every variety. I found it to be laid out really nicely. It's organized. Everything is organized by like age group and genre. There's an antique section. I kind of zipped around the bookstore for a little bit, just kind of getting my bearings, figuring out where everything was at. And then I rushed over to the children's book section. And at first I was getting a little bit worried because I really wasn't seeing too much. I found a couple of things like The Accidental Monsters by David Lubar, which was a pretty cute cover. It was a book that I've been wanting for a while, but it wasn't a first printing. So for those who don't know, I collect first edition, first prints of all of my books. I try to, at least. I know not everybody's picky about that, but I am. It kind of serves as a guideline and a boundary to keep me from collecting just every book I see out in the wild that looks cool. If I open it up and I see that it's not a first printing, I put it back and I wait for another one. It kind of limits the amount of books that are flooding into the library, which, I mean, it's already happening, so I have to, cut the line somewhere. Anyways, I was getting a little bit bummed out because I wasn't finding a whole lot, and I'm like, oh, is this gonna be a bust? And then I got to the children's mystery section, and that's where I started to get really, really excited. And I'll go ahead and say that the adult mystery section, it's not too shabby either. First off, I found a whole bunch of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys books there. There were a ton. There was a whole shelf full of these things. And if you know me, I love Nancy Drew. I love Hardy Boys and Boxcar Children and Bobbsey Twins and all those wonderful magical mystery books from back in the day. I collect all kinds of different editions of these, starting off with a couple of these glossy yellow flashlight editions, as they're called. These were the books that I grew up with. I collected a lot of these yellow flashlight editions, which look really nice on the shelf together. These, however, are pretty rare. So this is book number 61 and 62. So these were originally published in paperback back in the 70s, early 80s, but they weren't published in these glossy flashlight editions until like the late 2000s. No, I take that back. 2005 is when these came out. These editions have become really rare and very collectible because there just weren't very many in print. A couple more classic titles here. We have UK editions. These are vintage UK editions. So this one here is Nancy Drew, The Clue in the Old Stagecoach. It's in really kind of ratty condition, as you can see. but these UK editions are really, really rare, especially here in the US. I never find them. This is like the first one I've ever seen. It's got different in papers than the US editions did. It's got a red binding, which the US editions are blue, so that's kind of cool. This is also a kind of the UK alternative to the glossy flashlight editions. So we have the witch tree symbol. Now this series is pretty new. These books all came out like 2009 to 2012. I grabbed all of these. They were $1 a piece. That's a great deal. And because you can't have Nancy Drew without the Hardy Boys, I did find a couple of Hardy Boys Case Files books. This is the 80s/90s Hardy Boys series, which is a little bit edgier. It was definitely aimed more at teens instead of children. So we have number 55, Beyond the Law. As you can see, you've got very much like action adventure kind of covers here. I love this cover, Chokehold. We've got In Self-Defense. We're in an arcade. These books rock. I love them. And also while in the children's section, I found a couple other books here. I love the Bailey School Kids books. So we've got Bailey School Kids, number 28, Unicorns Don't Give Sleigh Rides. So we have a Christmas edition here. And then this is a spin-off series called the Bailey City Monsters. This is book number 3. Vampire Trouble. These ones are pretty rare. I'm also a really big fan of John Bellairs. He's a great author. He wrote House with a Clock on Its Walls. He wrote spooky books for kids that are genuinely spooky, and a lot of his books are also illustrated by Edward Gorey, who's one of my favorite illustrators ever. So I always pick up any kind of edition of his books I can find. I like these older paperback editions because these are the ones that I used to read. So this is The Chessmen of Doom by John Bellairs. It's a Johnny Dixon mystery. And another classic children's author is, of course, Judy Blume. So this one's called Here's to You, Rachel Robinson. I've never read this one. I've read quite a few of Judy Blume's books, but I never ever read this one. I don't think I've even heard of this one before. The next area of the bookshop that I visited was the antiquarian book section, which I found to be very, very impressive. They had some truly gorgeous books there, including some vintage children's mysteries that I enjoy, and just a whole slew of other gorgeous, gorgeous books. So I made sure to get plenty of footage for you guys. I didn't end up walking away with very many antique books, but I did get a couple. So we have one of the Bobbsey twins books here. It's kind of like Boxcar Children. They're a bunch of siblings who go on adventures and then solve mysteries. This is the Whitman edition, which is from the 50s. And then we have Minnow Vale by Winifred E. Wise. I don't know. I just saw this cover with the mermaid and I was drawn in. This is another Whitman book. It says it's a teen novel on the spine. So while the antiquarian section was an A+, I loved it, the comic book section left a little bit to be desired, unfortunately. Most of their graphic novels and trade paperbacks were nothing more than just ex-library copies, which was kind of a shame. I would have dug through the single issues for a spell, but I knew it would take a lot of time, so I might save that for my next book shopping journey at the Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore. They also had a metaphysical book section with a few interesting books, but weirdly, these books were marked quite a bit higher than the typical $2 to $3 price tag. I did, however, snag this Hans Holzer book for a really good deal. This is a hardcover edition, The Ghosts of New England. I'm a big fan of Hans Holzer, so I'm always going to pick up his books for cheap. So then from there, I ventured into the other stacks of the library where they had just kind of a general adult fiction section. I got 2 books from that section. We have a couple of Alice Hoffman books. Alice Hoffman is the author of Practical Magic, which you've probably at least seen the movie Practical Magic. Great movie, great book. She's a wonderful author, and I'm always trying to collect the other books that she wrote besides just the Practical Magic books. Usually when I see copies of these at half-price books or other used bookstores, they're like $7 or $8. Here, they were $3. And then I hit the adult mystery section, which, as I was saying before, awesome. It was so, so nice. They had the typical James Patterson section. If you collect James Patterson, they got you covered. I'm not so much a James Patterson fan, so I skipped that. But I did get quite a few cozy mysteries. I'm a big fan of cozies. I love them. They feed my soul. I'm especially a fan of cozy mysteries that revolve around books. I'm a fan of books. Did you notice? So I picked up 2 books in the Booktown Mystery Series, where it's a town with streets and streets of bookstores. I've got 2 hardcovers from the series. So we have Poisoned Pages and Tidal Wave. And we have even more literary themed cozy mysteries. We've got one of the books in the Starlit Bookshop mystery series, which I've not read. That's called How to Book a Murder. And 2 books in the Jane Doe Book Club mystery series. We've got On Borrowed Crime and Reading Between the Crimes. I want to live in this illustration. Look at the shelves. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is why I love cozy mysteries. It's all about the setting for me. Here's another cozy mystery series that revolves around books. It actually takes place in the Castleton Manor Library. Castleton Manor, what a name. So we have Bitter Words. These are all hardcover editions. They're really, really nice. They were $3 a piece. The Grim Reader, A Deadly Chapter, an autographed mystery, 2nd edition Death, and a crime well versed. So these are, I think, like Christian cozy mysteries. I'm not like real into Christian fiction, but I just love the setting here. I love that it takes place in a library that is called Castleton Manor. Seemed like the kind of place I want to take a vacation to. So here's a big stack of those. I have book 1 already, so I now have books 1 through 7. So I can get reading. They also had the rest of the series. At least it looked like the rest of the series. There was a ton of them, and I could have easily gotten all of them, but I decided to cap it at the first 7 so I can actually read them and see if they are any good. They might actually be super cringy for all I know, so we'll wait and see. And we've got one more bookish themed cozy mystery. It's called Extrasensory Deception. It is a book in the Raven's Nest Bookstore mystery series by Allison Kingsley, which looks great. This one's a paperback. And speaking of paperbacks, they also had a vintage Agatha Christie. Love Agatha Christie. She is the bomb. So we have Murder on the Links. And then just 2 more cozy mysteries here. These are both by Charlotte McLeod. So these are older cozy mysteries. These are from the 80s, I think. The Resurrection Man and The Odd Job. I have quite a few books in this series, so I'm always trying to fill it out a little bit more. So there you go. All of those books purchased at the Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore. What are my final thoughts on the store? Well, I'm going to hand it back to Past Cameron, and he's going to give you the lowdown. Jesus Louises, what a big store. I got a whole box here sitting next to me. I had to carry it down the block, and I am like out of breath and just like chugged a bunch of water. A little out of shape, guys. I'm not what I used to be. So, my impressions of the bookstore. I think it's awesome. It is huge. At the front of the store, they have a processing area where they're just digging through boxes and boxes and boxes of books. So it's very easy to assume that the next time I come here, they're going to have completely new turnover and like a whole bunch of other books to choose from. It does seem like the kind of place that has serious turnover, which is great for me because I can see myself stopping here quite a bit in the future. Now, when it comes to the kinds of books that I collect that are more in the vintage realm, they had a really, really tiny horror section, so not a lot to choose from when it comes to horror. Mostly it was Dean Koontz and Stephen King, same as always. They had a very small little Goosebumps section, so nothing very exciting there. I only saw 2 Fear Street books that I already owned. I'd say that my main complaint about the store, other than the fact that they have a really small horror section, is that there are no carts. I was carrying all of the books in this. So I was carrying around this entire box of books, which is full to the very top, in a basket. And I walked past a lot of workers and none of them offered to like take my books to the front desk. I had to actually walk to the front desk and be like, hi, can I leave these here? And even then they were a little bit hesitant for some reason. The staff was a little bit unhelpful and a little bit cold. They weren't very friendly, so that's another complaint I would have. I mean, they weren't necessarily rude to me. You could just tell they didn't really want to help. Now, I am a children's librarian myself. That's my day job. I know from working at the library that you need to be very personable. You need to be helpful to people. Anyway, lots of cool books. I'm very, very happy with everything I found, and I can't wait to get home and start looking through all of these. So, we went to the Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore, and now we're gonna go on down to Dayton, Ohio, to one of my favorite bookstores ever, which is also a book warehouse. It is called the Dollar Book Swap. What's this? Are we back in the car again? That's right, because we're gonna go on another book shopping excursion. This one's a little bit closer to home for me, and I've taken you here many, many times before in past book shopping vlogs. So if you wanna check any of those out, I do have a playlist of book shopping vlogs on my channel, so you can catch up and see what this bookstore has to offer, because they have a lot of books. It is also a book warehouse, which is why I thought it might be good to pair this with the Cincinnati bookstore. It is literally a giant warehouse filled with books, and everything is $1.25, so it's very, very cheap. It doesn't matter if it's paperback or hardcover or an old book or a new book, everything is $1.25. And they have constant turnover, so you never know what you're gonna find when you go here. There's always something new. They also have movies and CDs and audiobooks and records. It's just a whole wonderful place. And we're gonna go there next and see what we can find here. And we'll see who wins the book warehouse battle by the end of this video. Is it gonna be the Cincinnati bookstore? Is it gonna be the Dollar Book Swap? We'll have to wait and see. We are here, we made it to the Dollar Book Swap. Like I said, it's literally just a warehouse. So this is what the outside looks like. It might not look too inviting from the outside, but it looks pretty good on the inside. Let's go inside. The Dollar Book Swap has been one of my favorite places to shop since it opened up like 10 years ago. As soon as you walk in the door and you're grabbing your cart, there's a whole wall full of children's books. So from the very first minute of being in the store, I already had a book, and that's another Bailey School Kids book, because like I said, I love these. This is Zombies Don't Play Soccer. It's one of the earlier books in the series, and it's a first print, so I grabbed this up really quick. From there, my first stop is usually the spooky kids book section. I always have to check to see if they have any Goosebumps books by R.L. Stine. This time around, they didn't really have anything I needed, except they did have this hardcover bind-up edition, which I did want, but sadly it was a little bit worse for wear. I did find a couple of the Bloodhounds Inc. books by Bill Myers. This is another Christian series that's a little bit of mystery and a little bit of horror. So we have book number 1, The Ghost of Crazy, and book number 6, The Case of the Missing Minds. As you can see, these covers are super, super kooky and funny. I do have a lot of these books now. I was especially excited to find book number 1. My best find of the whole visit, though, were these Bone Chillers books by Betsy Haynes. I loved the Bone Chillers books growing up. They're a Goosebumps knockoff, but I would say they're one of the best Goosebumps knockoffs. They really do stand alone as being just a really good book series. They're also quite rare nowadays, especially this one here, which is the one I picked up. This is Queen of the Gargoyles. It's book 16, I think, in the series. It was one of only 2 books in the series that I am missing, so I finally snatched myself a copy of Queen of the Gargoyles. It's in beautiful condition. As you can see, there's a little rip down here, but otherwise it looks really, really nice. Sadly, this is a book club edition, so it's not actually the first edition that I'm after, but I did actually just recently on eBay snag myself a first print of this for a very good price. It's funny how hard a time I had trying to track this book down, and then as soon as I found this at the Dollar Book Swap, I found an affordable copy on eBay. So that's just the way it goes. As you can see, their spooky kids section was pretty stacked this time around. There were lots of rare and collectible books, and these were all $1.25, like I said. So I picked up a pretty good stack of things. Twitches, twins, witches. Exactly. This is, of course, the basis for the Disney Channel original Twitches movies. They're not great. They're really, really cheesy, and the books also look incredibly cheesy. This is book number 1, which I needed for my collection. The Haunting of Derek Stone. This is 2 books in 1. We've got City of the Dead and Bayou Dogs, just a couple of spooky ghost stories for kids by Tony Abbott. I was talking about how much I love John Bellairs. Well, here's another John Bellairs paperback. We've got the drum, the doll, and the zombie. A very spooky, spooky cover. Now entering Weirdsville. Oh, I was so excited to find this. This is one that I've been looking for a very long time now. It is published by Lowell House. who did the Scary Stories for Sleepovers books. Not Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That's the original. Scary Stories for Sleepovers was more of a knockoff of that. Lowell House did not just those, but tons of other scary storybooks for kids, including now entering Weirdsville, which is, like I said, one that I've been trying to find for a while. It's less of a scary storybook. It's got more of like weird, spooky places around the world. It's rare. I have had a really hard time finding this, so finding it there for so cheap was just mind-blowing. We also have great writers and kids write spooky stories. Pretty straightforward title. So this is a really nice hardcover book where you've got a bunch of notable authors. We've got Ramsey Campbell in here, who's a very big name in the horror genre. Rick Hatala, Melanie Tim, Matthew J. Costello, Peter Straub. Some really big names in the horror genre are in here writing with their kids. So like, that's cute. That's really, really cute. I love this. We also have Queen of Cold-Blooded Tales, which is signed by the author, as you can see. Such a spooky cover. I remember checking out one of these American storytelling books, and it was called The Scary Story Reader, I believe. My school library had that. I got it dozens of times. There was a terrifying story in there about a girl comes home late at night. She turns off the lights. She lays in bed. Her dog is, of course, sleeping next to her. He's on the floor. She feels him licking her hand. And then she gets up in the morning and finds out that it wasn't her dog. It was somebody who had broken into the house and was underneath the bed, licking her hand. And on the wall is a message saying, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" To make matters worse, there's a terrifying illustration inside that book of a man holding a knife. He's underneath the bed looking up like this. So scary. That's stuck in my head forever. That's one of the books from this American storytelling series. I also got book number 8 in the Last Apprentice series. This is called Rage of the Fallen. I love the Last Apprentice series. These books are amazing, a great blend of fantasy and horror. Lots of wonderful, creepy illustrations inside. Even though these books are aimed at children, they're gnarly. They're really scary and gruesome and just freaking cool. So if you've not checked these out, please do. So within minutes, my cart was already filling up with books, and it just continued to fill up, as it always does when I go to the dollar book swap. The store is organized and laid out really, really nicely. Half the store is children's books, which is great for me being a children's book collector. You also have the other half of the store, which is all adult fiction. The adult horror section always leaves a little bit to be desired, unfortunately, but the rest of the store is great. I did find 2 adult horror books though. We have Hot Blooded, which is a collection of short erotic horror stories. I don't know, I'm not really into erotic fiction, but I try to collect every bit of horror I can find. We also have a first edition of Beast by Peter Benchley, who is of course the author of Jaws. I've been trying to find a nice copy of this for a while, and here it is. Looks brand new. I was so glad to find this for $1.25. There are also these giant, humongous bins just overflowing with books. You can test your luck and dig through those bins if you want. I've done it in the past. I'd prefer not to because it gets your hands really, really dirty. And a lot of the times there's just not very many good books hiding in those bins, so it's not really worth the time. That's not to say I haven't found some cool stuff in there though. So, I mean, you do what you want. They also have a really nice movie section with just tons of DVDs, and now they carry Blu-rays too, which is cool. I only got one movie, and that is Vampires. This is the sequel, actually, to John Carpenter's Vampires. It stars John Bon Jovi for some reason. I got 3 more books here that I picked up at the Dollar Book Swap. We do have, of course, the Hardy Boys. I love Hardy Boys. I've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again. The Missing Gator of Gumbo Limbo. That's a fun title, just a vintage kids mystery. And we have a book I've been looking for a while. This is I Thought My Soul Would Rise and Fly. It's part of the Dear America series. This was one of my favorite Dear America books growing up. I love this series. It's historical fiction written in the form of diaries. For me as a kid, I kind of struggled with history, but these were more digestible for me. It was easier for me to learn about history through these, you know, fake diaries. And this one was by far the best. It also won a bunch of awards. So we visited 2 book warehouses. So you're probably wondering, which one's better? It's hard for me to say. I've been going to the Dollar Book Swap every other weekend since they opened. I've gone at least 50 times, and I've always found a huge stack of books there. They're always restocking, they're always refreshing their stock. I can't say that for the Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore because I've only been there once. I don't know if they refresh their stock very often. I won't know that until I've been there a few more times. I will say that I found a much bigger stack of books at the Cincinnati bookstore than I did at the Dollar Book Swap this time around. But then again, I was just at the Dollar Book Swap like a couple weeks ago, so I had already found a lot of books then, and I still found a whole bunch of books just a couple weeks later. The main difference is the price. The Cincinnati Friends of the Library Bookstore prices their books individually. Most of them are really well priced. It's like $1, $2, $3. Whereas the Dollar Book Swap, it's just $1.25. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter the condition. It's just one price and it's cheap. So basically, I just like them both for different reasons. They're both great places to shop, and I recommend both of them. If you're ever in the area, check them both out. They get my seal of approval. Thank you, Creeps, so much for going on this book shopping warehouse journey with me. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below to let me know what you thought about this. Happy reading, and I'll catch you next time. Later, Creeps.